The Formula 1 record books will never do justice to how dramatically Lewis Hamilton scored a record-breaking 7th British Grand Prix victory after a lukewarm race boiled over in a chaotic final 5 minutes. Of course, this being F1, nothing is simple. This was an intricate web of chaos that played out in Hamilton's favour by a few valuable seconds, and it could have been oh so different. Before we go any further, make sure you don't emulate Mercedes and leave it too late to act, so give this video a like, subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to stay up to date with everything we have to offer at the race. But now let's dissect 292 seconds of chaos and whether Red Bull and Mercedes could have handled a crazy situation any better. With 4 laps to go, Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas were heading towards a comfortable 1-2 finish, even though Bottas was nursing a vibration on his front left tyre. Bottas' issue gave Max Verstappen opportunity to keep the pressure on in 3rd, while Ferrari's Charles Leclerc kept the McLarens at arm's length for 4th, but in truth the order seemed quite settled. Then Bottas kick-started 5 minutes of madness in which he was dumped out of 2nd place and left to survey the damage to his title hopes. Carlos Sainz Jr. and McLaren lost 4th, and Hamilton's 34-second lead turned into a scramble to the finish that made the world champion's heart sink. We don't need to run through all of the details in the race, but Bottas was incredibly unlucky to suffer a puncture through the final corner, wrecking his Grand Prix and leaving him with a painstaking full lap of the circuit to do with a deflated tyre. On his penultimate lap, Sainz suffered the same fate as Bottas but into the fast Maggots and Beckett sequence, gifting Renault driver Daniel Ricciardo 4th, and seconds after Sainz's problem, race leader Lewis Hamilton's front left let go as he finished the first sector on his final lap. Hamilton was able to drag his busted W11 to the finish line with just 5 seconds to spare over Verstappen, who had dropped to more than half a minute behind after a late pit stop to chase the fastest lap. The trio of tyre failures shook up the leading position significantly, left Verstappen swearing profusely over the radio at the checkered flag, and allowed Ricciardo to equal this version of the works Renault team's best result in Formula 1. It was a crazy finish, but could Mercedes have avoided it, and did Red Bull blow a chance to give an intense conclusion an extra twist? When Verstappen overtook the limping Bottas a few laps from the end, Red Bull had 2 choices. Continue cruising to the finish in the hope the tyre holds out just on the off chance the other Mercedes hit trouble, or take advantage of track position and a huge gap to Leclerc to pit for fresh tyres and go for fastest lap. Verstappen told his engineer, "I'm going to take it easy on this tyre now mate," and then a few seconds later added, "I'm really going to back it out." This was little more than an acknowledgement of concern and the need for caution, but Red Bull did decide to play it safe. Just over a minute after Bottas' failure, Verstappen was in the pits. Given Bottas' vibration issue, there was no specific reason to think Hamilton would be struck by a similar failure, so this was an understandable although conservative call from Red Bull. It removed itself from the potential of any unusual scenario in which it could put Hamilton under pressure late on, choosing instead to protect what it had. There was no real indicator that Verstappen's front left tyre was at risk, although this was a narrative that Red Bull pushed quite hard post-race, with team boss Christian Horner claiming the tyre that came off the car had about 50 little cuts in it, so it's been through debris. And Verstappen insisted post-race that he had no regrets, viewing it as a 2nd place gained rather than a victory thrown away, and pointing out that a failure of his own would have been much worse. Now, of course, Red Bull would play up the risk of Verstappen suffering the same fate as Hamilton once events unfolded to make it look like it had lost a chance at an unlikely victory. And we accept the logic that 2nd place plus fastest lap was 4 points more and much better than Verstappen would have got had he picked up a puncher. But it was at best a questionable decision from a team reduced to sniping for unlikely victories in 2020 rather than the title bid that it was aiming for, and this is a team that, like its parent company, should pride itself on being bold rather than making percentage plays, especially when the team's in a one-bull race for 2nd in the Constructors' Championship. Perhaps the real area of regret will be in how it managed Verstappen's in-lap and out-lap. He had backed off after Bottas' puncture, but that was initially with a view to going to the end. So could he have pushed more had he known he was pitting earlier than the final sector? And how much time did he lose on his relatively slow outlap as he made sure he had all the tools at his disposal, including a charged battery and the correct engine settings, to go for fastest lap? It's impossible to say how much that slow outlap was crucial to Verstappen's bonza final lap. Had he pushed harder, perhaps that last lap wouldn't have been as special. But the conservatism certainly cost Verstappen a few seconds. Not enough to overhaul the gap to Hamilton entirely, but definitely enough to further intensify the immense pressure Hamilton was under to get his three-wheeled wagon to the finish line. There's no evidence to suggest Mercedes could have played Bottas' situation any differently given the sudden onset of the puncture, but it has accepted in hindsight that it made the wrong decision in leaving Hamilton on track. As soon as Bottas' puncture was confirmed, Hamilton was told to protect the tyres and asked not to push for fastest lap. Hamilton duly obliged, dropping his pace at the same time. But Mercedes did have an open goal to react with even greater caution. Hamilton had an advantage of more than half a minute, and the team had at least half a lap to make the decision to pit after Verstappen had stopped. Mercedes trackside engineering director Andrew Chauvelin's verdict after the race was an honest one. He said, "At that stage, we thought Valtteri's issue was quite isolated and probably weren't alert to it being something that affected both cars." Any confidence that Hamilton would be unaffected was eradicated when he radioed in just after turning into Brooklands to say his front left tyre had gone. What followed was the unenviable task of completing 2/3 of Silverstone with a puncture, while the pursuing Verstappen set a new lap record in a bid to hack away at Hamilton's lead. Mercedes told Hamilton to lock the differential, and he also focused on minimising loads he was putting through the front left. Crucially, he was able to stem the time loss with a brilliant final sector in which he aggressively accelerated from Stowe to the final complex of corners and somehow got the car stopped, turned in and round despite locking the mangled front left. The mix of ecstasy, confusion and relief that was released by Hamilton and his engineer Peter Bonington was no doubt shared by others on the pit wall and in the garage. Both driver and team later admitted that they got this wrong and got lucky. Perhaps privately, Red Bull and Max Verstappen will feel something similar, fortunate to gain second place, but knowing that different decisions could have yielded a different conclusion. After all, Verstappen finished just 5.8 seconds behind at the flag, and even if you accept the decision to pit was the right one, more aggression either side of it would have slashed the gap, if not eliminated it completely. But that's all part of the fun of such a chaotic conclusion to a Grand Prix. So do you think Red Bull got it right or wrong? And were you surprised that Mercedes didn't pit Hamilton? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and why not give us your predictions for the second part of F1's Silverstone doubleheader while you're at it.